Hello and welcome to Manufacturing Northern Ireland's Meet the Makers podcast, where we hear directly from people leading, supporting and transforming businesses and the sector across Northern Ireland and beyond. This series is produced in partnership with eData, a project supported by Peace Plus, a programme managed by the Special EU Programmes Body, otherwise known as SEU-PB. Today I'm really pleased to be joined by Grainne McVeigh. Gráinne is a former Director of Advanced Manufacturing, Engineering and Life Sciences at our investment agency, Invest Northern Ireland, which is the region's economic development agency. During her 17 years with Invest NI, Gráinne worked closely with businesses across the manufacturing and engineering sector, helping companies grow, innovate, export and compete internationally. Gráinne has a degree in French and an MBA in International Business, as well as a Diploma in Marketing, Diploma in Personal Management, and a Diploma in Company Direction through the Institute of Directors. Today, Gráinne holds a number of senior non-executive roles with boards ranging from the Consumer Council to TransLink, our transportation company, our colleges, Northern Ireland Alternatives, and the Armagh Observatory and Planetarium, where she's on the management committee. Gráinne, it's great to see you first. I haven't seen you in a while. You're sadly missed in your former role in Invest NI. The new guys are great, but you were better. I'll say that.
Hopefully that is recorded. I'll make Brandon watch it.
On a personal level, very much miss you in that role because we work very closely together and it was a really helpful relationship, which is sadly missed now. Gráinne, maybe just begin. Can you just start telling us a little bit about yourself and the kind of range of roles that you've held during your career?
Okay. It's funny having to look back for this. I had to also make a speech and translate to women in engineering, and they said, "Tell me about your career." And I thought, right, how do I make this sound good? But the reality is it was non-linear. Let's say that, Stephen, non-linear, which is a really fancy way of saying that there was no master plan. Absolutely no master plan. Really, my career started off when I left university. At that time, with a French degree, I thought I was going to be a teacher. But thankfully, I was put onto a management training course and really enjoyed that and went into company business and really enjoyed being in the business. I was in the personnel management side and worked in manufacturing there, both in aerospace and then went to the shipyard, actually, Harland and Wolff. And if I look back on my career, it really is a series of opportunities, great people, a bit of luck. And every now and again, a wee bit like Alexander Hamilton in the musical, I was not going to miss my shot. So if somebody said, "Will you try this?" I went, "Sure, okay, I will." And that, I think, for me is, if I look back, I did start in manufacturing on the development program. Doing the MBA actually made a real difference. And that was when I went to IDB. And then through IDB, I went to work in the United States. That was a real game changer for me, working in the US, coming from Northern Ireland in the early 90s, where we still had the Troubles, and going to sell Northern Ireland in the US on the West Coast. And that was early enough in the time where technologies were emerging, companies were emerging, and it was just exciting. I just really enjoyed that. Worked in the US for a while and was lucky enough then to move to a US company and work there in global sales and marketing. And then coming back to Invest NI, as you said, longer now than 17 years, but in 2007, to take up international sales and marketing and working with the international teams to sell Northern Ireland. So retired a couple of years ago, but kept my hand in and working with some boards, which I have to say I thoroughly enjoy. It sounds great when you look back, but I think at the time, non-linear is definitely the way to describe it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good kind of point, actually. You call it non-linear and no master plan, and someone just says, "Will you give this a try?" And you're the first one to stick your hand up and go, "Yeah, I'll do it." I have a kind of similar attitude. I call it serendipity, where you have those kind of happy occurrences, but you only discover those happy occurrences if you put yourself physically and mentally into the position where those opportunities come to you. And I suppose that's the same for business as well. If they're not present, if they're not in that space, then those opportunities just don't come along. I don't think there's any criticism of a non-linear career. I think there's a lot of value to be gained from something like that, just about being aware enough and wise enough to be present whenever opportunities then begin to provide themselves to you.
I think so. And it's funny, it's also the corollary of that missed opportunity that was like a sliding door moment, if you remember the movie, where, different things could have happened if you'd gone down that path. And it's taking the opportunity, even when you think that you have failed, or even where you think you have hit maybe a roadblock, and saying, well, actually, no, I'll divert here. I'll do this instead. And that has happened to me. I can point to sliding door moments in my career where, as you say, you have to think, you know what? I understand what's going on here. I'll take another step. And to be fair, I think younger people today will have portfolio careers, Steve, and they won't have that. I joined the company and man and boy, and here I am retiring. I think that's gone. And that portfolio of different careers and different ability to step into different things is definitely more prevalent than it was when I was starting out, for sure, you know.
I think that's a very astute point, and it presents a challenge for manufacturers and other businesses where they would hope somebody would come in maybe as an apprentice or straight out of university and stay for 40 years and then retire. But if that's not the ambition for the people arriving in the business, then the business needs to pivot and change in order to provide opportunities to try to keep these people.
Absolutely. And certainly the manufacturing companies that I worked with and saw that succeeded were the ones that gave opportunity. It could be the opportunity to pivot. It could be the opportunity to develop. It could be the opportunity to gain more qualifications. But I think you're right. The expectation of a company now that you're going to come in and you're going to sit there and just work for me. It has to be a two-way relationship. And I'm sure we'll talk about skills. I'm sure we'll talk about what companies need to do, but it has to be that two-way relationship. The successful companies that I saw were the people that did that invested in people and brought them forward. It gave them opportunity. And sometimes, I mean, I've seen companies go, I'm giving them the opportunity to leave because sometimes they will come back with better experience or more perspective.
You talked there about going to the United States, working for IDB, or development agency, and then going back into the private sector and then returning back to our development agency. And when you returned, you've kind of been involved in a raft of business areas around skills, as you mentioned, the marketing, the people management, company direction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, you ended up as head of advanced manufacturing, engineering, and life sciences. Were you always destined, because of your career in manufacturing, were you always destined to head that part of Invest NI?
Certainly manufacturing has been a current theme throughout my career, even when I was working for the development agencies. When I first went to the US, it was the early 90s, right? So at that point, Stephen, what Northern Ireland had to sell was its engineering heritage, its wealth of talent and skills, its ability to make things. And that was the story that we told. So I visited a lot of manufacturing companies. I know parts of New Jersey probably too well that I won't even go into. But working with companies on both the East and West Coasts, we focused on manufacturing because that was where Northern Ireland had a good story. Now that changed as we moved into the late 90s, early 2000s, where we started to see IT, software, financial services. But initially it was, what have we got in Northern Ireland that was world leading? We had the skills, we had a wealth of talent. So how do you pitch that? My manufacturing background was there. When I came home, because I came home for a couple of years and then went back out to the US, I worked in what was the old textile and linen industry and met a lot of manufacturers. An interesting time because it was on the decline and other industries were going up. And watching companies succeed in a declining market, how did they succeed? Where did they go? What did they do? The strategies. And there were some that just couldn't do it. They held on too much to, this is the way it should be, this is the way the past. But others that were successful to say, no, we see how this can be done. We see where we have a niche. We see where we can go into the market. Watching manufacturers not necessarily pivot, but take advantage of new opportunities was fascinating, even in that old sector. And then when I went back out to the US, again, working with manufacturing companies to ensure companies like Colorite or Seagate to say, this is what we have and this is what we can do. So I don't know if destined is the right word, but certainly thematically, I've been involved in manufacturing, both from the development side, but also working in it as well.
And I think that's a really interesting insight into what makes the difference between companies that successfully grow and scale and others that kind of struggle to move forward. I came across a great quote from Clint Eastwood. I didn't think I was going to talk about Clint Eastwood today. I came across a great
It isn't
quote.
Make My Day, is it, Stephen?
No, it's not that one.
Oh,
But he was asked, because obviously he's advanced in years and whatever else, and he was asked about how he stayed so young and so active. And he said, don't let the age in. So it's the old thing about how do you keep a house warm or how do you keep yourself warm. You don't let the air in. Well, it's the same thing with age. You don't let the age in. And the really successful leaders and the really successful businesses are the ones that are constantly trying to remain young. They won't sit still. They won't let the age into their business, into their product, into their operations. They're continually working on it. And I think you've kind of defined that there in terms of an industry potentially on decline, but actually able to pivot and do other things, or taking an old kind of stubborn industry and saying, listen, you need to change here because the world is changing around you. The age is approaching you. You need to do something different. I think your definition of that was really interesting for me. I mean, you talked briefly there. In fact, you just mentioned the company in passing, Seagate Technologies. And I think it's useful to tell people your own engagement there with Seagate, which involves the Prince of Wales. I understand that in typical Northern Ireland fashion, it involved a pub. Do you want to give us just into how that happened and the success that has been Seagate in this place?
Oh my goodness, yeah. When I went out to California, I was in Los Angeles. And again, you talk about, things that I didn't plan. I was the first female to go out for IDB or the development agencies. So it was like, well, what do we do? How do we do it? And we ended up looking at, again, as it said earlier, well, we're good at manufacturing. Let's talk to that. But we were also saying, how do we link into Irish networks? And we linked into a couple of the big Irish networks, both in Southern California and in Northern California. And when John Hume was a tireless advocate for developing in industry and passionately developed industry in dairy. And he would come out on visits, and it was so easy to say to a company, we have John Hume coming out. Would you like to meet him? And they go, oh yeah, absolutely. And we went round some brilliant companies, and companies were interested. It was very easy to get their attention, but you had to be able to say, this is what we can do for you. Nobody was going to invest, Stephen. Nobody, through sentiment. They might want to start, but they had to see a return on investment. These guys, even if they themselves personally felt they wanted to do something, had to bring this decision back to their board. They had to sit in a boardroom with people that couldn't even find Europe on a map, let alone Ireland, let alone Northern Ireland. So you had to create very succinct, but also a very powerful pitch that said, this is what we can do for you. And John Hume was very good. He would open doors for us, and we would go in and say, this is what we could do. And in Seagate, he met Brendan Hegarty. And I'm sure if you're in the Derry area, everybody knows of Brendan's story. Brendan was passionate. I remember him sitting down actually in, I think it was the Everglades Hotel. And he said, I want to do this for you, Gráinne, but you have to give me the right incentives. You have to give me the right pitch. You have to show me that this can. And you have no idea, Stephen, the ability of people to come together to pitch. People in Derry, people in IDB at the time, huge teams of people putting together a story. So when John came out to meet Brendan, it was, as you said, typically in a pub. And it was, do you want to go for a drink? And we went and we bought a pint. And that was where Brendan met John Hume through the Irish networks that were there in Northern California. Became an impassioned admirer of John and a real believer in what could be done by Seagate in Derry, and through the teams of people that worked on that project to be able to bring it in. And I suppose my one claim to fame is one, bringing him into the pub, and two, buying the pint. So I think I might have had a little bit more business in there, but buying the pint is fine. But if I look today, honestly, I think one of my most amazing moments was going to the 25th anniversary and hearing about the technologies, the generations, the leadership, the skill set, and the world-class research that is being done there. It blows your mind that could happen. And it's been there now, 30 plus years. So it's fantastic. And what can you say about John Hume? His belief, his getting off his butt and coming over, his walking around those companies and saying, we can do this. Gráinne will tell you how, and being able to do that. He was tireless, and he deserves every plaudit he gets for that investment. And the people in Derry, the management, the people that came in to work there, the growth of that company is a tribute to just the sheer skill set that existed. And now world class, leading the world in laser technology and photonics. And it's just an amazing story.
I know as a former public servant, you had to justify return on investment, and the return on investment for that pint probably will never be surpassed.
I don't think so.
But knowing our public services, you probably weren't allowed to claim for that pint in the first place.
You're absolutely right, because we couldn't claim for alcohol. You had to have dinner, you had to have food.
I mean, it says a lot about relationships, that story. I mean, we're incredibly grateful as an economy and as a manufacturing community, and particularly here in the Northwest, of that investment that was made by Seagate over all those years, because it has been transformative to this
Totally.
region. And as you say, we're incredibly proud of the world-class, not just the production, but the research and development that's taken place. That business continues to grow, continues to thrive and be successful. I mean, you talked there about the pride in the people in terms of their ability to deliver internally, in terms of pitching and getting that investment, but actually people here on the ground working in these organizations being able to deliver. And at the core of that, and I know it's something you're very passionate about, is skills.
Yes.
And making sure we have the right people with the right skills, but also continuing to invest in those people and their skills. From what you've seen, what should businesses really be focusing on to really kind of attract, develop and retain those skills, not just for now, but also for the future?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Certainly, again, going back into the dark times of history, which, when you're this old, you can do. So if I look back, skills wasn't a problem I had to deal with when I first went out to the US. It was just, we have people. We can give you people. Today, that is not the case. Today, manufacturers have to really sell themselves as to why should you come and work for me? Why should I work for you? What are you going to do for me? And if I look at the successful companies, the companies that actually work, they started to think differently. They started to adjust their ways of working, their shift patterns. They looked at how could they encourage more women into what were traditionally seen as male jobs. How do we attract returners? People that have left the workforce for caring reasons, and how do we bring them in? How do we collaborate with other companies, with universities, with the colleges to actually create career paths? Back to what we were saying earlier, how do I show somebody that you can come in, but I'm not expecting you to sit doing the same thing for the next 20 years. What I want to do is show you how you can develop, what the opportunities are, and how, things like secondments working and the collaboration amongst employers. So people like Mega or GemX, for example, where they have worked to create opportunities, apprenticeships, career paths, to me, is what manufacturing have to do. And I think as well, the flexibility of companies. So the changing of work patterns, creating shifts that actually work for people. Again, harder on management. It becomes something that management have to work with. But the successful companies have done that very well. And they have enabled people to maybe take up work that couldn't do that before. So I think, to me, diversity of thinking is important. Companies thrive on diversity, and they have to bring in people that will challenge their way of thinking. Can we do this differently? And not look for the traditional, a welder looks like this. Well, not necessarily. Maybe they look somewhat different. And that's hard because we all have internal biases. We all have default assumptions. So how do I make sure that those are not ruling what I think of? And I look at the work that, say, TransLink does in trying to encourage women in as train drivers, bus drivers. It's because we have a certain notion of what they are. Apprenticeships. Those are the sorts of things that we need to think very deeply about in order to do that. Good employers will think about it, do it, but will be rewarded because they will get in a diverse workforce that can think differently, challenge them, and maybe look at different ways of doing things.
And you mentioned in that response the importance of collaboration. And I think that's going to become increasingly important. Like, we live in a part of the world where the availability of labour is actually constrained at the moment and is likely to decline over the time ahead. And breaking down old suspicions, the old Ulster way of don't tell your neighbour your success and all that kind of stuff. It's attractive to many people, of course, but pride and suspicion gets in the way of actually things that will probably help people succeed. And collaboration, particularly in the context of the big kind of global challenges that are coming towards us really quickly, like decarbonisation, transforming digitally. From your experience in working across all that advanced manufacturing and engineering and life sciences sector, I mean, what does really good collaboration look like for you? And what were the best kind of practices that you witnessed where people break down their suspicions and just kind of go, well, we want to be successful here, so let's do it together?
Yeah. I've seen some great examples where companies are coming together. So like Manufacturing NI, for example, is where you bring people together to say, how do we amplify our voices? And I think you made a really good point about the Ulster way. Well, I just won't tell anybody about what I'm doing, but also how successful I am. Because I think we need to demonstrate how brilliant some of our companies are, some of the world-class, world-leading things that are happening, and shout that on the world stage. Collaboration and amplifying their voices is one way of doing that through, organizations, through alliances. But I think companies as well can collaborate. And where I saw that really successful be done is where they've collaborated on, say, for example, research and development, or they've collaborated with universities and colleges on skills and bringing people along, or apprenticeships, where they have collaborated on how new technologies can impact their sector, not necessarily there as a company. And if you can bear with me to go into life sciences for a wee minute or two, there's a brilliant program there, the Future Medicines Institute, that got funded through both DFE and UKRI, Innovate UK. That was a collaboration with, there's about 7 companies and the 2 universities, all looking in the area of precision medicine. Now, not one of those companies could do that themselves. Not one of them, even a company as large as Almac or Randox, they needed other people to bring other aspects. And they needed that collaborative environment and the challenge that they would get from other people to push some of their research forward. So to me, collaboration doesn't have to be a nil-sum game. It can be a win-win. And yeah, you're not going to sit down and design a product for the next guy to sell. But what you can do is say, how do we advance this together? And there's a lot of support for that. A lot of support, whether it's funding or the voices being amplified in terms of lobbying, or for things that have to change in order to make manufacturing easier or better here. So those are the sorts of things I saw work very well. And the alliances that were formed, whether that was like yourselves, Mega, Gemex, Harani, whatever, they all were, how do we bring people together to make sure that our voice is heard, but also how do we ensure that there is this, I'm sure there's a technical word for it, but this meshing that actually amplifies what we can do on our own. And I've seen brilliant examples of it. And the other thing, now I'm sitting on boards in the public sector, is where the public sector needs to work with companies to unlock some of the technologies and to help fund some of the technologies as well. Now, it's difficult in our budget climate today, I grant you, but if I look at some of the work that TransLink has done with, say, Wrightbus in terms of developing zero-emission vehicles, some of the work that NI Water has done with companies like Catagen, or, these are some of the things that are happening to drive decarbonisation, to think about how do we change the sector, but also how do we invest in local companies. And then the other area for me, again, with my board hat on from CERC, is how do we collaborate on skills? How do we say to regional colleges, this is what we need, this is how we need it, and be prepared to be challenged back. I've seen that happen where I want it this way and go, is it really the right way? So be prepared for the challenge, but have those conversations. And somehow or other, and I don't know how we do this, but we need a clearinghouse for information, because some of the technologies that are in the public sector that are not known to the companies, some of the things that are in the companies that are not known to the public sector, we need that efficiency of information exchange that allows collaboration to work really well. So, I mean, I'm not going to do that, but you maybe have to think about that one yourself.
I wasn't expecting to get a job out of this interview, but I think the challenge has been laid down there. But
it is a real need, Stephen, a real need. Understanding the skill set that's in the public sector, and how do we make sure that companies can take advantage of that? Not only take advantage, but usefully create products. And decarbonisation is one big area. Data is another. Fantastic things that are going on.
And it's very much a case of, we all know what we know, but we also don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
And somebody somewhere does know. Like, I get lots of calls from manufacturing businesses asking me, you don't know somebody who does this.
Exactly.
And I'll go, yeah, we know some people and I can talk to some people for you. And the reason why they ring me, because I'm not Google. I mean, they could Google and find this information out themselves. But the reason why they ring me is they go, well, Stephen's out and about. He's talking to people all the time. He'll know somebody who has done a good job for someone or introduced a system that worked. They know the successes of it, the challenges of it, I would much rather take that recommendation from somebody who's already done it
Absolutely.
in a safe way via Stephen than actually go and take the risk of doing this stuff myself in it. And I think particularly, I mean, let's face it, largely the leadership in manufacturing is male, middle-aged, straightforward, straight-talking. But the world is advancing, particularly in that data and technology side,
Absolutely.
at a pace that we haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
ever, probably. And that's a scary place for people, but we need to be open to this. And that's where this e-data project comes in, to basically say to people, listen, this is a safe way, whether you're in manufacturing, you're in retailing or any other sector, this is a safe way for you to actually begin to introduce technology, capture and understand what the data tells you to make better informed decisions. And our role in this project is to bring together that kind of collaborative network where it's not just people ringing me, then they can ring each other and actually understand the things that they don't know because somebody does know it and they're willing to share that. But I mean, digital is clearly making a massive difference here. I mean, and you were working directly with companies. Where do you think is a safe place for them to begin? A safe place for them to start?
I think you hit the nail there on the head in terms of collaborative networks, the ability to explore whether it's an impact on technology, whether it's on a sector or whether it's on a particular process or something, then a collaborative network where companies come together, they can all look at it from their own perspective, but they can all, as you say, input and challenge each other and think differently. And some of our leading companies, I know Seagate has done some collaborative networks on photonics, and we've had collaborative networks on various elements of green technology. There's different areas where this can happen. And so, for example, one that I think is really cool is the space one, where we have manufacturers who work a lot, whether it's in space or defense. And they will look and say, who are we working with? How are we doing it? Where are the customers? How do we talk to ESA? How do we talk to NASA? How do we do that? And the experience within that of some of the larger guys with some of the smaller ones is brilliant. And again, if I look at, for example, AOP, the planetarium, some of the work that they're doing on data visualization. Now they do it to show you where the stars and where the planets and where, something is 50 light years away and what's happening. They do that, but they can visualize data in any area. So I said, if I give you data, can you show me what's happening inside a body? Oh yeah, we can show you. We can do that. These are skilled people. So how do we bring them in to collaborative networks? And just recently, they've been appointed the STEM ambassador. So they're working now with companies, creating STEM ambassadors and being able to show the technology that is inherent within the planetarium and within the observatory, but also being able to see what companies are using data for and how you create people that will say, this is a cool thing to do. So that collaboration needs to think, in my mind, it needs to think broadly. It's not just, well, I'm going to talk to the three I know that are in the same business, because maybe you'll reinforce each other's ideas then. Maybe you bring somebody in who goes, well, have you thought about it this way or differently? And that works really well in collaborative networks. And I think in digital and AI, particularly, using the expertise that's in our institutions, and whether that's in Momentum 1.0, whether it's in AMEC, whether it's in the digital catapult, being able to look and say, okay, if I have to think differently about this, what should I be doing? But there's a lot of support and a lot of help out there to do it. And I genuinely think for companies, collaboration, and especially in the areas of the innovation and digital, is a way forward, because I don't think you'll be able to do it alone. And as you say, it all can't come back to the center. Much as you are a brilliant source of Google and information, it can't all be a spoken wheel. It has to be a free-flowing network. How we do that is difficult, but it has to be done. And as you say, I don't know what I don't know is not an excuse anymore. Go and find somebody that will help you do this,
People are very keen to do that, not just from a commercial point of view, but they want to see other people succeed, particularly entrepreneurs, which is great. I mean, people watching this podcast today will see how generous you are with your wisdom, and you're managing to now share that wisdom.
When you say that sounds really lovely, but when other people say it, might say, she talks a lot, that woman, doesn't she?
I have criticism as well, so don't be worrying about that. But you talked there about sharing wisdom, and very helpfully, you've decided that whilst you're not going to be in full-time employment, you're going to still be very, very active. And as we said at the beginning, you're involved in a number of organizations, from TransLink to the Observatory, the Regional College, amongst others. And they're very grateful that you're sharing your wisdom with them as well. But I mean, being outside of the world of work and being at that kind of board level now and perhaps having time to think and see things more kind of strategically, what do you kind of see as the biggest opportunities for our place in the next number of years ahead, and what do we need to do to get there?
Yeah, I see a recurring theme here. One of the things that has surprised me in all the different boards I'm on is the cross-cutting nature and that ability to say, well, do you know this or do you know that? Or that could be really useful over there. So it is that mosaic. You have a piece of the puzzle here, the jigsaw, whatever. You have a piece here, a piece here, put them together. Say, well, actually, if you brought all that together, that would be a pretty cool picture. So being on different boards and seeing from different perspectives has really given me a deeper understanding of some of the issues. And it's very easy sometimes to sit back and say, well, I don't see why they just don't do this. And particularly on the TransLink board, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't tell people you're on the TransLink board in Grand Central Station, because then you get asked about bus timetables and why doesn't their bus run there? But when you see how all of these things can come together and the issues that companies have to face, whether it's organizations or companies, if you have a different perspective, you sort of say, well, don't keep pushing that door because it can't open for you. At the moment, public sectors are horrendously challenged by the budget issues that we have in Northern Ireland at the moment. So for me, if you say what needs to happen, we need to sort out the budget issues over the next few months in terms of being able to agree a budget and move on. Now, whether that will happen or not, I don't know. So we need to figure out how do we live with what we've got at the moment. But also, how do we collaborate? How do we understand the issues? So, for example, in CERC, understanding the issues of people coming in with special education needs and the rise that there's been. Employers are going to have to deal with this as well, because people will be coming into the workplace with a different set of needs than before. As you said before, our population is going like that. There are going to be fewer and fewer people. Now, immigration can change that. But we have to think about how then do we cope with those education needs, English as not as your first language, all of those sorts of things as well. And how do we collaborate to make the best of that? If I look at the opportunity side, I look at things like how brilliant we are in the manufacturing side, in space, defense, technologies, the research and R&D, again, in the life sciences side. World class. The opportunities for growth, I think, as well in agri-food, and bringing forward robotics technology into companies. So we have invested heavily in things like AMIC, digital catapults, to say, how do we help companies do that? And that will also help in terms of the skills agenda as well. So how do we bring all this together? Again, information clearinghouse, Stephen, for me, how do I not know about that? How do I find out about that? How do I help companies do that and not get into my little silo? So if I look at the opportunities for growth, I think we will build in our engineering expertise. I think we should shout more about how good we are at some of the engineering, especially things like Mid-Ulster engineering of heavy equipment, generators, the space technologies that we have here, the defense technologies that we have here, the life sciences technologies that we have here. Those are some of the things that, to me, we need to get Northern Ireland on the map for and say, we're investing in these areas because these are strengths we can build on and we can be as good as anywhere else. We are as good as anywhere else and we can be better as well. The whole area of nano and photonics as well, that photonics corridor that Seagrid created as well, for me is a fantastic example of how we can build technologies and spread out. When I first went to Silicon Valley, there was a poster on the wall that had Hewlett Packard research at the beginning, and it was like a family tree, that spread out, and you could see all the companies that came out of that. And I think there's opportunity to have that family tree in Northern Ireland from massive companies like, whether it's Shorts, whether it's Thales, whether it's Seagate, whether it's, Terex, any of these. You look at how they've spawned niches, competitors maybe, but niches and other areas. And I think we have that opportunity in Northern Ireland. We should talk about it. We should get it out there. I'm a salesperson at heart.
Yeah. In a former life, I went to a little primary school and I sat in the reception area waiting to be called and meet the principal and some of the pupils and stuff. And there was a poster on the wall, which I thought, it's always stuck with me, which was, behold the turtle, because he makes progress when he sticks his neck out. And I just thought it was a great line, but also a great inspiration to really young children. These were primary school children. And I thought, well, That's what we're telling young people these days, that
Yeah.
actually take a risk, stick your neck out, have a go at it. Then that would make a massive difference to a place like this.
You can't go better than quoting Alexander Hamilton. Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda talking about Alexander Hamilton. I'm not going to miss my shot. You take it and you go for it. And especially, I know when people come to me and ask, well, what do you think I should do? I always said to people, go for the adventure, go for the shot, go for something, because you look back and that'll be the exciting thing that you've done. And there's always time to recover. There's always things you can do. So yeah, I'm not going to miss my shot. I could break into song. I could, but I won't.
Ulster has suffered enough, Gráinne.
True.
I feel bad about finishing up here and asking you to kind of pick a thing from the past when we're having such a positive conversation about what the future looks like. But we recognised you and your contribution through our Manufacturing Hall of Fame back in 2024. And I remember the shock on your face because we didn't warn you that we were doing it in advance.
Exactly.
That when your name was called out. But if you had to look back rather than looking forward, but if you had to look back, would there be one kind of like standout from your career, a proudest moment, or the thing you kind of go, well, that's made the most difference to me and to this place? What would that moment be?
This is like desert island discs when you have to just rescue one from the ocean. Oh dear. Well, that night, I have to say, was probably one of the most surprising and proud moments of my night. I still look back and wonder at it, but it was a wonderful thing, and thank you for that. Seagate holds a special place in my heart. One, because I know just the sheer work that went into bringing it, and I see the result. And I have two mementos from that time. One, an inscription from John Hume. He gave me something and he wrote in that, and it was very powerful and lovely. And Seagate gave me a special plaque and a piece of marble. And in the olden days, it was a disk drive. So it was that, and they gave me that. So those are two things that I hold very dear from the Seagate memory. But if I look back, Stephen, I've had so many wonderful highlights in my career. Again, a lot to do with people, a lot to do with opportunities and taking them. And, things that I did when I thought I couldn't, so being the first woman sent overseas to IDB. I can't even tell you. Don't think I'd be allowed to tell you some of the things that were said to me at the time. I think they were illegal, even then. But, just some of the things that I've done where I just thought, oh, what the, and went for it, I'm glad to have done it, but I've been lucky. I've been very lucky and very grateful for that. But also I've been lucky to meet some wonderful people along the way who frankly have helped. Couldn't have done it without them.
Well, we're very lucky and very grateful that somebody with such a passion for our place, our people, the products that we produce, that they've wanted to contribute to that to now, and actually have not given up contributing to that, Gráinne. So we're all enriched by your passion and your sense of purpose, which is greatly appreciated, and that needs said. We'll finish up now, but I just wanted to say I really enjoyed seeing you again and talking to you again.
It's lovely, yeah. I think I still owe you a round of golf, which I will not play with you, but Ken has said he will step in my place.
I'll happily exchange for a glass of wine someday.
Glass of wine, for sure. I can do that bit.
Just to say, we're very grateful for your time today, firstly, and the contribution that you've made, but also very grateful that you've been so kind with the wisdom that you've managed to gather over your career and continue to share with others. As I said earlier, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. I have yet to come across a problem that somebody hasn't been able to fix because someone has actually gone and worked out how to fix it. And we need to get over ourselves a wee bit here and actually be open to collaborating more and working more with others in manufacturing and in other sectors and those that are there to support them, because we are a special community that can make and does make a difference in solving problems for the world. And you've had a great role in helping us get to that point, and that's very much appreciated. So, Gráinne, just wanted to say thanks for that.
Thank you.
From our perspective, this is a podcast that's brought alongside eData project, which I mentioned at the beginning, but we do have an opportunity through that project to assist companies in scaling, to enhance their business, and to provide support, including one-to-one mentoring and tools. So if people are interested, if they want to open up the door and allow that technology into their business and understand what it means for them, then certainly get in touch and participate in our collaborative network. But Gráinne, just to finally say, it's great that you're continuing to give so much, and we hope that continues for a long time to come, and we'll catch you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Stephen.